Now we talk about identity services. So for any kind of a system, identity services are really, really necessary. Most of you guys know about Office 365 by now, and Office 365 licensing, as you know, is per user. What does that mean exactly, per user? Can somebody explain what does a user particularly mean in context of Office 365?
I can try.
Yeah, sure, please.
Okay. So it doesn't matter how much data or how many people actually working in within the client premises. The only thing that counts is how many of them are actually going to use or have the permission to
Okay,
use it. Yeah.
fair enough. Then it begs the question: who is a user? That's
An
all
account
fair.
holder without admin uh, authorization.
Okay, account holder. And how do you characterize this account holder? Does he have an email ID? Is that how he's characterized, or who's where is this account created exactly? Where is this account created? We know it's an Office 365 user, but where is that account? Anyone?
Yatharth, user is referred as that number of systems that on which it will get installed. No matter whoever the user is, no matter what the user ID and the password is, but it entirely depends on the system information that it is
A
getting installed.
that's a very pro plus definition of Office 365 user, right? But we can have users don't have that have multiple devices too, right? A single user can have multiple devices too. What my question is, it's slightly different. I'm asking that, okay, you say that the user is somebody who's using the service, right? Fair enough. User is somebody who's using Office 365. My question is, where is this user created? Where is this user registered? The answer to that would be, okay, with Microsoft, of course, because Microsoft is giving the services, so users must be registered with Microsoft, right? They are Office 365 users, they're Office 365 people. Okay, makes sense. But Microsoft actually have a whole system just for registering users and giving them the services. There's a whole system to that. Office 365, okay, there are some services and we provide these services to multiple users, but how do we decide that which user gets which service? We have a whole system for that. That system is called, and you might have heard of it, Azure Active Directory, right? What is Azure Active Directory? It's a place where the user accounts are created with Microsoft, right? No matter how many users you want to make in Office 365, every person has a user account in Office 365 is part of Azure AD in some sense, right? Uh, has everyone here heard of Azure AD? Some of you have definitely, but do you, is there anyone who does not have an account on Azure AD? That should be the question. Who does not have an account on Office 360 on my bad on Azure AD yet? That's the question. Anyone who does not have an Azure AD account?
Everyone who is using a Microsoft laptop, which is pre-installed with Office 365, is using uh, Azure.
Is
This,
part of Azure AD. Yes,
yes,
that guy is already part of Azure AD. That person is already
yes.
a part of Azure AD. Now everyone is going to get their VDash IDs if they haven't yet in a couple of days time mostly, right? So where is this VDash registered? It's at the rate Microsoft.com. Okay, there is no at the rate Microsoft.com. There is something called as Azure AD. It's a directory in which we can create smaller domains for our companies and we can register users within that space, right? So Azure Active Directory actually lets us create that space and lets us create those users. What's the point of creating all these users? So that I can do two things. That's the whole point. I want to do authorization and authentication. They sound similar, but they are totally different things, right? When we are talking about authentication and authentication is just to check who you are, right? Now, who you are is all right. That means that you have been let into the door. But now another question rises is that what are you supposed to do or what are you allowed to do, right? Which services would you be able to access? Which services would you not be able to access, right? Now, this is extremely important and a different thing, right? Because you need some sort of system that has a total database of all the people who are registered and what are they allowed to do, right? That's a totally different database, right? So these are the two databases that we have actually. Authentication would be, okay, does this person exist? Yes. What is his password? What is his email ID and stuff like that, so that you can get in. Once you get in, it's a totally different ball game. Another database is there. Okay, this is the person. What can this person actually do, right? So it determines your service level, determines your level of access. What can you access, right? Somebody who's using business premium and somebody who's using E5. Well, there's a difference in authorization. What services can they use? What services are they a part of, right? So there must be a system in the backend that is doing all of this. And all of this is called identity and access control. Identity, because I need to check, and access control because I need to authorize you, right? And this is called identity and access control. Every cloud platform needs to have a system like this because we are hosting the applications there, and we are not just going to let anybody waltz into it and just start working on somebody else's application. No, we need some sort of a system. So every cloud platform has one of these. Google Cloud Platform calls it IAM, Identity and Access Management, right? Uh, Amazon, in the same way, calls it Identity and Access Management. We, on the other side, we don't call it that. We call it Azure AD. We call it Azure Active Directory. Well, we should have technically called it Identity and Access Management as well. But we have a product. Microsoft already have a product that is so popular and does the exact same thing but on-prem. That product is called Active Directory. So Microsoft thought that, okay, why not market this product as Azure Active Directory so that people can relate with the familiarity that, okay, we already know Active Directory, how different could it be? Okay, this is totally different. Azure Active Directory is a cloud-based identity and access management services for Microsoft. When I say for Microsoft, Azure Active Directory does not mean that it is limited to Azure. Office 365 in the backend uses Azure Active Directory. There is a product we call Intune. It uses Azure Active Directory in the backend. There's a product called Dynamics 365 that also uses Azure Active Directory in the backend. Two things. If it is Microsoft, if it is on the cloud, if both the things are true, you are using Azure Active Directory, no other way about it, right? So what it does is authentication, authorization, single sign-on. Single sign-on would mean you sign in once and, well, you are signed into all your applications. You don't need to re-sign in per se every time, right? Business to business communication, you have two organizations connected with each other. You have business to customer kind of identity services. If you want to create your customers accounts, we'll get to all of that. And device management too. Which devices are part of the subscription, which devices are not part of the subscription, like just like your computer as well, including Office 365 here, right? So when you are trying to convince somebody to use Microsoft Azure, right, one of the simplest ways to actually win their trust in some extent is if they are using Office 365, and you will find so many people who use Office 365, it's a popular thing. You can tell them that you, in fact, are already using Azure Active Directory. So when you move your services to Microsoft Azure as opposed to AWS, you don't have to spend too much into the identity services. You don't have to spend too much time and too much effort into the identity management because that has already been taken care of since you are already on Azure AD being an Office 365 user. So this is just one of the things, right? Azure can actually provide you multi-factor authentication. Some people are looking for MFA. For them, Azure AD is absolutely beautiful. What is MFA? Well, three things, right? I uh, I just need two out of three things actually, right? First of all, I need to know who you are, right? I need to know who you are. So you give me your email ID. I ask you for password. That's something that you know, right? You give me your password, and that's about it. You get in. Then I tell you that, okay, do you have a cell phone? I will send you an OTP. Then something you possess comes in. You get an OTP, and you type in the OTP. You get in. Then it asks you for your biometric scan, and then it asks you probably for your iris scan or something like that. That's something that you are. So biometrics, passwords, OTPs, multiple devices is called multi-factor authentication. And yes, we can do it and we can configure it. Actually, it's not so difficult to configure. Once you are on Azure AD, it's actually a click of a button and you get MFA directly. Nobody has to do anything. So there are some security features on Azure as well. That is called Azure Security Center. So what does Azure Security Center do? It's basically a centralized service. It's a centralized service that is going to help you in managing all the threats and all the antiviruses and issues like that on your on-premises and on your Azure. If somebody is already using Azure Active Directory, somebody, and by the way, all of these products that I'm discussing right now, they are part of or extension of Azure Active Directory. Okay, so it's a monitoring service. You have to configure it with your on-premises devices and you have to configure it with your cloud workloads. And it tells you if there's a threat, if there's a compliance issue, if there's anything, Azure Security Center will give you a notification either in your email, on the portal, or on your cell phone. You can configure text messages and text alerts from Azure Security Center. Anytime anything goes wrong, you get a text message, right? Or there's a group of people who will get a text message in that case, right? So how does it work? Azure Security Center, how does it work, right? First of all, it detects the threat, it diagnoses the whole system, it closes, stabilizes, assesses everything. So all of this is basically kind of a loop, right? That all of these stages, diagnose stages, detect and assess stages, we are doing two things using all of this. First of all, we are doing this threat detection part, that okay, there is a threat. Okay, how do we tell people, how do we first of all detect that there is a threat? And as soon as we detect it, we should tell the people who are responsible that okay, there is a threat, you should do something about it. That's the threat detection part. So detect and diagnose part is there, right? Then there is something called as a more proactive approach. Threat detection does not cut it, right? We need a more proactive approach to this. We need threat prevention, right? So Azure Security Center also assesses all your workloads in real time and tells you all the compatibility issues, all the compliance potential threats that could be, so that you can stay protected from threats in the future, right? So Azure Security Center is something to, it's pretty awesome actually, right? So we are not going too deep into the compliances and the requirements, to be honest, because again, if you are talking to a healthcare industry, company from a healthcare industry, you can tell them it's HIPAA certified. There's a CSS star regulation, GDPR regulation is there, NIST is there, Criminal Justice Information Services is already part. So actually, when we talk about compliances, right? Microsoft has over 80 security and compliance certifications, over 80, right? That's more than double of any cloud providers in the market, right? So there are so many compliance and security attestations that we have in Microsoft Azure. Is that, well, it kind of instills the trust when we are talking to a customer that yeah, it is certified. If they are talking about a particular regulation, most likely we already have it, right? So this is one of the major factors in Microsoft Azure, right? So again, this is kind of like boring stuff and non-practical stuff, but we'll still breeze through it anyway. So Microsoft privacy statement. Well, you can go and check Microsoft privacy statement, and you can see what data Microsoft possesses, what purpose is data used for, and how Microsoft processes it. Right. By the way, if you have anything and you put it on Microsoft Azure, any data, Microsoft Azure keeps it for 99 years. Right. We are going to keep this data for 99 years. If you actually install it, if you actually upload any kind of data there, but Microsoft cannot read that. They just keep that just in case it might be needed in the future, but they cannot read it themselves because it is encrypted. Okay. So then we have something called as the Trust Center. In Trust Center, you can, well, actually you can see a lot of information about security, compliance, features, practices, and all that stuff. But it's just something. I'll share some links with you that if your customer wants to access all these links, you can just share it. Yes.
Yatharth, can you minimize the window, please? Yeah, this one, the one. Can you minimize that, please? Thank you.
So yes, basically I'll be sharing some links with you guys. If your customers are interested, right, then of course you can share these details with them. So Azure Government Services, there are certain governments that Microsoft Azure or Microsoft works very closely with, including China and United States of America, right? So there are separate instances of Azure for government agencies in Microsoft Azure. We have separate regions for government works and military. So this is more, you can say, this is more relevant for the audiences in United States of America because again, DoD and American government, that's what comes under all of this. For China, we have a separate region called Azure China 21 ViaNet, physically separated from whole of Azure cloud, as you would know, that China have some like weird regulations. Their data does not go out, or if it goes out or comes in, it has to be under the surveillance of Chinese government at all times. So Microsoft have a dedicated data center in China for the people who want to use it there, right? So is that making sense so far, or is it all too much?
Quite a lot.
Yeah, I was just wondering on this actually. I mean, we can kind of build our own, and there are some resources in that kind of like in your own time reading you gave us for the fundamentals of Azure training thing. But are there any like cheat sheets, or I mean, I guess we can just print off all of the services and then kind of make ourselves some notes on how to link it all back. But obviously, there's just so many different services that kind of form part of Azure, and picking the right service to pitch could be a bit of a challenge without a cheat sheet. So I mean, we can just build our own, but I wonder, do you have anything like that that we could be using for when we start selling next week?
Well, what I would suggest is that you go and follow the Pareto's law. It's basically the 80-20 rule. Out of like these 800 services, we are not going to require 800 of them, right? Why am I, as you would have noticed in this session as well, that when we were discussing storage, right, we just discussed majorly file share and blob storage. We did not discuss tables and queues and disks. Why not? Because those are not very frequent when you're making sales, right? So what I would suggest is the best way to go forward is to be comfortable with the services that you are, is to be comfortable with the services that are more commonly used, that we are discussing in this training as well, right? So what I would suggest is that if I find some information, if I find some kind of a notes kind of format thing, then I'll share it with you, right? I happen to have a flow chart. I created a flow chart a few months ago where Azure services are kind of listed. So I will be sure to share with you guys, right? So that you can have all the services right in front of you whenever you're making the calls. So you can refer to that.
That'd be really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, that was actually my question. So thanks for raising it, because I was thinking, you know, when we get one of the C-level suites on the phone, they've probably got a limited time to listen to us. and it was, I'm very conscious of their time, because within about 2 or 3 minutes they could decide whether they're interested in what we're saying anyway. So something almost like a précis, sort of like a short overview of everything we've learnt, if you like, that we can have by our computer. So when we're speaking, we could just go zup, zup, zup. And I think that's what I'm thinking as well. Otherwise, they're going to be talking at a level, for me personally, I don't know about the rest of the guys because you all sound quite knowledgeable, but for me personally, some of it is quite techy, and it's being able to maintain that level in the conversation. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it will actually, a lot will become more clear with experience of calling with Microsoft Azure, right? Because again, these are technical things. As much non-technical I try to make them, but there's still a lot of technicality involved in this, right? But what I would suggest is that let me be sure to share that flowchart with you guys. But whatever services are on that flowchart, right? You should know those services properly. Because again, you see the service, then you start saying about the features and when that service is used. But the services would be listed right there in the flowchart. So that's going to help. In my opinion, that's helped a lot of people in Denave itself. But I'll share it with you, and you guys can share the feedback with me. If you need any particular resources, I will work on it and send it to you if you need.
Sorry, thank you very much. That's really helpful. But just while we're on this topic, again, this is something I was thinking I was going to build out myself. But if you already have it within the company, that'd be great. I mean, any FAQs that you get, because if there's like certain services that are, like the 80/20 rule, Pareto's law, like you said, if there's certain services that are already sold, that are sold the majority of the time, do you have like FAQs and the standard objections all written out in any sort of sheets that we could use as well? If not, that's fine. I'm sure we can build out our own, and we will build out our own as we go along. But it kind of makes that initial learning curve, a little bit less steep.
Thanks, sir.
Well, not specifically FAQs in form of FAQs, but in form of kind of visual aids and all that stuff. But let me check what material I have in like this central repository that we have. And if anything is relevant, I'll be sure to send it to you guys.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
I'm sorry, but I'm a bit confused right now because I understood that this couple of months we are not going through a sale per se, like to the end of it. So am I wrong?
I thought that too.
No, we're not. I mean, sorry, I don't. I'm just being trained as well. But I thought the process was we're just starting that initial conversation, warming the lead up to the point where they want to have a meeting with a Microsoft team member, and they're ready to go to the next step. But we still do need to understand enough about the service to actually get them to that point. I don't think we need to know really, really granular technical pieces. We're not closing the sale,
Not
but
really, not right now. You don't need to know everything in Microsoft. It's going to be kind of difficult to learn everything in a week of time, right? But yes, the basic services, learning them is surely going to help you convert the leads into the opportunities. Yes, that's going to be there. But technicalities, I believe Fanan would be able to explain those better as to how what the technicalities are and what you are exactly supposed to do for the first 2 months.
Could I ask, your flowchart that you made reference to send us all, is that listing, if you like, the basic services of Azure that we will must know?
It's listing the services. It's basically I would have shown it to you on the screen, but I don't remember where I kept it on my computer. So anyway, so it's basically broken down into 4 parts, right, or 4 or 5 parts. It is compute, then it is storage, then it is networking, then it is databases, and then it is Azure AD, right? Whenever you are having conversation on any of these, right, where to steer the conversation and which product would be helpful when, it's written there. So it's in that sense.
Thank you.
But yes, we can discuss more about that tomorrow, because I will be sending you that today after the session is over. So then we have Azure subscriptions. So the idea behind Azure subscription is that for from one account that any customer gets on Azure, they can create multiple subscriptions, right? What's the idea behind these multiple subscriptions is that you want to sometimes uh, keep the billing separate for different things, right? Let's say I have a development team, I have a testing team, and I have a production team, as you can see it on the screen right now, right? I have these different teams, and I want to find the billing of the development team, the testing team, and all of these teams. I want to have separate bills and have control over them. So rather than keeping them in one subscription and managing that subscription granularly, it's going to be very difficult, right? So a smarter way to go is to get one Azure account and to create multiple subscriptions. Now, this is not very relevant to us, right? But it is very relevant when the customer is speaking with a partner of ours, right? That how many subscriptions are they going to make or stuff like that. So this is basically cost optimization part of the things, right? They A user can just have one subscription, and under that subscription they can have all the resources, or they can split up the subscription. It's totally up to them. So then we have some offers on subscriptions as well. First of all, we have like that free subscription that everybody gets $100 subscription when they first sign up with Microsoft Azure. Depends. Some people get 50, some get 200, some get 100. Most of people get $100 or 30 days of usage, whatever finishes first, right? So what happens in that case is that you are allowed to use Microsoft Azure for free, right? Basically, for 30 days, you can create any resources as long as the total billing is under $200 or $100, whatever you get, right? Other than this, we have the most common subscription. It's called pay as you go. What's pay as you go subscription? Whatever products you're using, you're going to get a bill. You're going to pay for those things. You're going to move ahead. Use things, get a bill, move ahead. That's pay as you go subscription. Then there is something called as an enterprise agreement. Now this happens mostly with enterprises and organizations and bigger fishes. Basically, Microsoft has an enterprise agreement, so the charges and all that stuff is quite different from what it is at pay as you go. Now pay as you go is kind of expensive, right? If you go service by service, pay as you go is expensive. When you have an enterprise agreement, then the total cost of operation kind of comes down per unit, right? Unit cost kind of comes down when you're talking about an enterprise agreement, right? So, as I said earlier, one account can have multiple subscription or one account can have a single subscription. That's totally up to you, right? This account, like this Azure account, it can have one subscription that's pay as you go, another subscription that's enterprise, another subscription that's something else. Totally possible, right? So you can have different kind of payment methods attached to a single account. Okay. Again, free account is $200 credit for 30 days. 12 months of popular free services. Basically, what 12 months means is that you can still access your data for 12 months, but services you can use only for 30 days, right? So that's Azure free account. If anybody wants to dabble into Microsoft Azure a little bit, I would totally suggest that you go with a free account once. Just type it into Google, free Azure account. They are going to create an Azure account for you, and you can, well, go crazy. That's going to work, and it's a really good tool for learning as well. Okay. So there are ways of purchasing Microsoft products and services. What we do is we don't worry too much about this, right? Because we are aligning most of the customers with our partners are going to explain the customers how to buy stuff, right? They can go with pay as you go, they can go with enterprise agreements, they can go directly through the partner channel. It's totally up to them, right? So purchasing Microsoft products and services, again, there are many ways. You can buy directly from the Azure website, have an enterprise agreement, or go through CSP. CSP basically is what we do. We align them to a partner. Our partner basically build the solutions on Azure, and basically the payment happens through the customer's own billing channel to the CSP, right? So this is the third one, is the one that we work upon cloud solution providers. We work with multiple partners in the region. Microsoft prefers to call them as CSPs, right? Now, what affects your cost on Microsoft Azure? When you're working on Microsoft Azure, first thing that's going to affect your cost is how much are you using, right? Of course, right? Consumption, it's a consumption-based model. The more you consume, the more you pay. So if you're consuming less, you're paying less. Also, it depends upon the type of resource that you're using. If you're getting a bigger server, you're going to pay more, right? And what kind of server are you getting? Are you getting a Windows server or are you getting a Linux server? Because Windows licensing costs would increase and would also include in the monthly package, right? When you're going for a blob, are you going for a hot tier or a cold tier? Because that's going to change the cost again. So type of the resource is going to affect the cost. Other than that, services are going to affect the cost, right? How much you use those services, how do you get those services, which channel did you buy from is going to affect your cost as well, right? Other than that, you have the location. Now, this is a very, you can say it's a very minute difference in cost, but it's a difference nevertheless, right? If you create your products or buy your products from different region, right? Different regions have different pricing of products, right? A virtual machine could be $6 for me and $6.25 for somebody who's in the United States. Totally possible. So the location can actually dictate the cost as well. Then we have this tool called as pricing calculator. We will see the pricing calculator tomorrow, right? What we do with pricing calculator is that we can find the total cost of the products that the customer is looking for. Let's say uh, we have just given them an idea of using virtual machines, right? How big the virtual machine is going to be, which operating system is it going to use, what's going to be the region, then how big is the virtual machine, basically how much RAM, how much CPU does it have. So all of this is going to actually incur a cost, and we have an estimate and a really close estimate at that, right? So basically we can have this monthly estimate. As you can see, it says 730 hours. 730 hours would mean a whole month of functioning, right? Virtual machine running 24/7, that's going to be the cost per month. And that's pretty good, to be honest, right? Other than that, when we are talking to the customers, something that is really important is that you tell them about some of the discounts that they can get. This is really, really important. You will see so many objections that, okay, I just read that Microsoft Azure is more expensive. I read that AWS is cheaper. I read that GCP has better cost proposition. It's not true, right? Because we have a lot of discounts with our machines and with our services, right? First discount, well, there are three discounts, but we are going to discuss only two for now, right? We'll get to the third one later on. But first of all is there is a discount that our partners give because the customer, you can see this estimate, right? $188. If the customer goes through the partner channel, the partners are going to give them 10 to 20% discount on these services. So you can have a 10 to 20% discount on this. Well, it totally depends upon the partner, and most of them do provide the discounts at this rate, right? So this is something that we use, the pricing calculator. Other than that, the second discount is the commitment discount. If you commit for 1 year, right? If the customer commits for 1 year, Microsoft gives up to 25% discount to those customers, right? If your customer is going to say that, hey man, I'm going to use this for the entire year, book me in, reserve my virtual machine, then Microsoft is going to give them a 25% discount, which is pretty awesome, right? If the customer goes for 3 years of discount, 3 years of commitment, right? Then we are going to provide them with around 33 to 35% discount per annum. Basically, in the 3 years of usage, they are going to pay only 2 years of money. That's what it means, right? So there are a lot of discounts, and these discounts add with each other, right? So pricing calculator is not going to give you any discounts like these. It's going to give you 1 year and 3 year discount, but it's not going to calculate the partner discount and license discounts and all that stuff. So you have to make sure that you tell your customers that, Mr. Customer, you see $188 here or you see $150 here. This is not the final price. The final price is going to be much less because there are discounts that are there to be given. So of course, that's something that you should tell your customer, right? So there's a calculator that we have, another calculator. I'll show you guys tomorrow the calculators and all that stuff. The total cost of ownership, the TCO calculator. What cost would it have? What's the cost of using some services on-prem, and what's the comparative cost on the cloud, and how less are you paying basically on Microsoft Azure? So this is a pretty handy tool as well. Look, how do you minimize the cost whenever you're talking to any users and they are like, and you would come across a lot of users who are using Microsoft Azure, by the way, and they will have some complaints that my bill is higher than I expected it to be, right? Then we tell them this, that okay, do cost analysis, monitor what you're using, whatever you're not using, of course, get rid of it, right? Avail discounts like 1 year discounts and 3 years discounts. Choose the locations that have lower costs, right? It's not going to make a huge difference. It's still going to make some difference nevertheless. Keep up to date with the latest subscription offers. Microsoft keeps on releasing new and new offers. And also, this is really important for you guys, that you stay in touch with your partners. You will be assigned 5-6 partners, I think, per region, right? Stay in touch with them, see what discounts they are offering particularly. So that actually goes a long way, right? Apply all these changes, apply tags and all that to identify that who and which services are incurring a higher cost. So, of course, there are some support options on Microsoft Azure, right? It's not very relevant to this, the particular discussion that we are having, but again, the customer can actually go for different support options, and professional direct support, 24/7 support is there for Microsoft Azure. And yeah, they have to pay extra for these support plans, but there is basic support that is available to everyone. What technical support you get? You get a chat box, you type in your query, you get an email response from Microsoft Azure. That's basic and that's there for everyone. Other options customers can actually look into. So any questions so far in what we have discussed today?
No, I think that makes sense. Is let's say if you do get an objection related to Google, like GCP or AWS, is it really, like, just to kind of sum it up, you sort of leverage the power of Microsoft's partner network? You know, yes. They'll already be working with a partner for their licensing. It's more convenient because you're going to get one bill from one partner. It's going to save your finance team a lot of time. Is it that sort of play, I guess?
Not necessarily. Yeah, that would be very helpful if you can bring that in. But one of the things that we can leverage is that our partners are offering discounts. Whatever price that the customers see over the internet,
yeah,
it's not the real price.
Sure.
That's about 10 to 20% discount on everything that they are going to get from Microsoft Azure. Additionally, if they are going for 1 year and 3 years of commitment, they get additional discounts.
Yeah.
25% or 33% per annum. Right? Those are the discounts. Other than that, okay, there's a third type of discount as well, if you're curious. If they already have Microsoft licenses and they are moving to the cloud and they are thinking that, okay, I'm not going to use my Microsoft license anymore, this is a waste. No, that's not a waste. If they turn in their licenses while moving to the cloud, Microsoft gives up to 50% discount on these services too. It's called Azure Hybrid Benefit. So you get around in a perfect world, in like the best case scenario, the customer can get up to 70 to 80% discounts easy, right?
Okay.
So yeah,
Cool.
that's one thing. Yeah, of course. Any more questions?
So the calculator is not showing the partner discounts.
No, it doesn't, because it depends upon the partner too.
Sure,
And
sure,
in some regions there is nothing that partners do.
sure.
Right.
And it was
So,
really
yeah.
important what you mentioned about handing in the licenses. So what is that discount called again?
It's called Azure Hybrid Benefit.
Thank you.
You get up to 50% discount if you're handing in your Windows Server license or if you're handing in your SQL license. For those, it's valid. Any more questions?
Just one thing, going back, SQL. Can you just explain that again for me, please?
Okay, SQL is, okay. First of all, database is a place where data is kept in a more structured manner. Okay. Now, all the companies make their products, their own database products, like every company makes their own operating systems, right? So Microsoft makes a database product, Oracle makes it. There are so many companies that make databases, right? The one that Microsoft makes, it's called Microsoft SQL Database. It's a software, right, that you can install on your system, and your system becomes a database server, right? And you need a license for that. So that's Windows SQL or Microsoft SQL.
Thank you, got that.
Any questions? So guys, if you later on have any questions, either you can just text on the WhatsApp group, right? Or what would be even better if you could text me on Team or within the chat box of this chat as well. Sometimes I'm not very active on WhatsApp. So you can just send your questions right here or queries right here. Okay. So we can just stop right here for today, and we can pick this up tomorrow, and we have some calculators to see, and we'll discuss sales play too. There's been a sales play conversation yet or not? Has there been a sales play conversation with you guys? In general, with Fanar?
No, not in general. We've had a script, like a sort of an opening script from Finan, but in terms of like relating these technical topics to a sales discussion, not so much.
Okay. So we'll see specific sales play on Azure too. So I will be sharing some documentations with you tomorrow, right? So if I forget, by any chance, if I forget, please do remind me, okay, that I need to share some documentation with you. So you will have ample documentation, you will have ample reading material, and you can refer, go back and see the stuff, how this Microsoft sales plays are supposed to be used. What I would suggest is go through the sales play. Don't like get married to it, or don't stick to it, because every customer is going to be different. So approaches again is going to vary. But yeah, it's a pretty handy thing to have sales play on different services on Azure. So we'll do that. So please do remind me tomorrow, in case I forget.
And the link, sorry, that you sent to us all here on the chat about Azure, if we go through that, that should give us a good synopsis about it as well.
Which one?
I think on the chat you sent us a link. It was about Azure.
AZ fundamentals.
Yeah.
Yes, AZ fundamentals. Yes. So that is basically some reading material if you feel curious about Microsoft Azure, right? But that's going to help over a longer period of time, right? Because there's a lot of stuff in there. There's a lot of different